Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I'm going to be comparing the two thickest production folding knives of all time in a head-to-head battle. This is the PMP Ultimate Alpha Beast, and this is the Miguron Omega. Now, let's start this off by pointing out that neither of these knives are practical. Both of these knives will actually hinder the user versus your typical lightweight, compact folding knife. These were designed to appeal to specific enthusiasts and collectors who like intentionally overbuilt knives. In other words, both the creators of these knives and their target audience know exactly what this is, and most people don't buy these with the intention of, putting them in a role where they are somehow superior to a regular pocket knife. No, they're just cool. They're just fun. They're just big. But they are still functional, and a lot of people looking to pick one of these up for whatever reason might want to know which is better in certain categories, because there isn't really a clear winner. In terms of which one is truly larger, well, yeah, it's the Ultimate Alpha Beast, but there are plenty of reasons to pick this guy up, and it is nearly the same thickness, especially when it comes down to the price tag. But I want to go over all of the little teeny tiny details for the very, very small percentage of people who watch my channel who might actually be kind of laboring over this choice. They're both awesome. You can't really go wrong with either. But there are some major differences to consider. So thank you so much to both Miguron and to PMP and Tools for Gents for sending this guy in, and the Omega, of course. Both knives should be available. I will link them down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. So first of all, I'm not going to do this like a regular review. If you want to watch my initial reviews of these knives where I have all of the details, the little teeny tiny specs and things like that, you can watch the individual reviews. So a lot of that we're going to skip, but we will go ahead and do overall measurements. So the Omega is the smallest, coming in at 9¼ inches, and the blade length is 4¼ with a cutting edge of 3¾ The Ultimate Alpha Beast is coming in at 10 inches with a blade length of 4½ and a cutting edge of 4¼ The other major stat is, of course, blade stock thickness. Now, both of these are way thick. Like, whatever is the thickest pocket knife you've ever seen, right? A lot of people are like, what about the extreme ratio this, or the Medford Praetorian tie, or the cold steel? These are so comically thicker than any of that stuff. There's nothing that even really approaches these. And the only ones that do are knives that are made by the same companies. Like, for example, the standard Alpha Beast, or the Miguron Arma XL, or the Geddon, right? These are far and away the thickest production folding knives. There have been some thicker custom knives, but, most people are not going to be super familiar with Reese Wieland fatty slashes, and I think it's Anthony Griffith, like some of those crazy ones there. Okay, I finally replaced the batteries in this thing so we can get a nice clear view. And most of you know by now, because I've measured these a whole bunch, 420 thousandths or so on the Omega, and then the Ultimate Alpha Beast, truly the absolute king of girth here, 450 thousandths. So thicker, definitely, but very, very close. I mean, to the point where they're like, you could almost consider them the same thickness, but just so that it is clear, the winner, the thickness winner, is definitely the Ultimate Alpha Beast. Now, the Omega was in fact designed to compete in this territory, but the competitor, what it was trying to be bigger than, was the original Alpha Beast, which it absolutely is, both in terms of overall length and in terms of thickness. This guy comes in at about 400 thousandths. So it's about, this at 425 thousandths or so is definitely thicker. And that was the idea. And then I think at the same time, in secret, this was being produced. And I think this is going to continue, right? I mean, somebody's going to make a bigger one, right? Now we have, it's like I said in the reviews, we have the Alpha, we have the Omega. Somebody's going to be cringe and do the Sigma or something. So who knows, whatever. It's just going to keep going. But as of right now, like these are the two kings, right? The other thing that we should measure that I didn't measure in the Ultimate Alpha Beast video is the thickness of the titanium scales. I think they are about the same. I think they're about 1/4 inch. I remember the Omega coming in just shy of 1/4 inch. So yeah, 240. This says 1/4 inch almost on the dot. This is thicker than the first time I measured it, so I must not have been right. 248 thousandths. And I bet you anything, it's the same with the Ultimate Alpha Beast. So 200 and are they measuring slightly thinner on the Ultimate Alpha Beast? Let's grab in a different area. 236 or so thousand. So a little bit thicker in scales for this guy. If we want to do like the overall, just because like I think that these types of weird little measurements are really important to some people. So let's measure the overall thickness of everything, like in the closed position from scale to scale. 968 thousandths, and I am on the pivot, but it's the same. They're flush with the scale. So 970 thousandths is what I'm getting there. And in this one, same. The pivots are flush, so we can grab there. Right. This guy is 9. Man, they're almost identical. That's crazy. It's 970 thousandths. So these two, with one having the thicker blade, the other one having the slightly thicker scales, is making them almost identical. It's just when it comes down to the total largeness, though, the Ultimate Alpha Beast is still going to take the cake, both in blade and in terms of the total amount of space that it occupies. These are humorously not milled out for weight reduction. the Ultimate Alpha Beast, which is something I did not cover in the review. This, the Omega, absolutely is. So the Alpha Beast, the Ultimate Alpha Beast, weighs 1 pound, 3.2, it's going to be somewhere in there. I think the review is like 1 pound, 3.5 ounces or something like that. That's a lot. 1 pound, 3 ounces. The Omega weighs substantially less, at actually under a pound. Now, while that's a crazy difference between the two, this is still nearly a 1 pound knife. Funny enough, despite it being bigger and thicker, because the Alpha Beast originally did not have milled scales, the original Alpha Beast is actually still heavier than this knife. 1 pound, 6 ounces. That's crazy. These things are huge, right? Some other little tiny things that are fun. On the Ultimate Alpha Beast, it is a T15 for the pivot, and then T10 body screws, which is awesome. The Omega has a T15 pivot with T8 body and clip screws. And of course, the clip screws on the Ultimate Alpha Beast are T10 as well. So yeah, they're both utilizing like full size, but I mean, like the Ultimate Alpha Beast does have bigger body screws if that matters to you. For me, it doesn't really, as long as it's big, more than T6, right? So yeah, as far as function goes, like as far as the action, like both pivots are really smooth. And by the way, both of these have Chinese OEMs. This is OEM'd by some, OEM that I'd never heard of before called Viperion, something like that. They did a really good job. To me, it's indistinguishable from, what Riot did with the original Alpha Beast, right? And then this, of course, is Miguron or whoever they're, using. As their OEM is really good. As far as like the manufacturing quality, I wouldn't say that one is better than the other, but they do have different materials, right? They also feel completely different on deployment. This uses like giant doorknob style thumb studs to deploy, and you can use the fuller, right? It's a little bit more of like I'm uncertain of what's going to happen when I put force into this. There's a little bit less certainty with deploying that one. This guy, it feels a little more natural because the flipper tab is designed really, really well. Like this is fine, and once you get it down, you'll be okay. But this, it just feels a lot more natural, and it also feels like, I'm a lot more, I'm way more comfortable flipping this one and deploying it. And I was initially, right when I opened it up. Also, this fuller here allows you to reverse flick it a little bit easier. So while the quality of action between the two is essentially identical, as far as which one feels better to deploy, it's definitely the Omega because it has the flipper tab and it just feels a little bit less, like you're not sure what the outcome is going to be. This one, there's a little bit of a, am I going to drop this on my foot kind of feeling, especially the first time you deploy it. And it also does require a little bit more energy and effort every time you deploy it. Like, it's fun and it's cool, but if you were to sit and flip these over and over and over again, trying to figure out which one you're going to tire out from first, it's definitely going to be this guy. It just requires so much less energy and so much more organic energy to deploy. Both of these knives, despite what you might think, are actually sharp. So while it is a giant wedge and it is not, like, if you're going to EDC these things daily and do regular tasks with them, all of those tasks are going to be made substantially harder by the fact that you're pushing this entire wedge of material into whatever you're cutting. And, the more caught up that the blade gets on that material, like if you're cutting something like styrofoam or rubber, oh my God, it's going to be kind of a nightmare. I mean, it's probably 5 to 10 times the effort that you're putting into these cuts. But both of them can actually slice. Which one can slice better? This is a Tanto. Maybe in the future we'll get, single edge or whatever, like where it's not, it doesn't have like the angle in it. Both are definitely sharp. Like, they've managed to make that final cutting bevel sharp enough to cut. Cutting with the Omega here, you can see it bites and it cuts. It's not incredibly clean. It's got kind of lifting on the edges there, but you can see it's definitely able to do that. And it's also able to do it with this secondary edge here. Your Ultimate Alpha Beast, you would think, a lot thicker at the edge. This is doing the same thing, but it is slightly, and it's coming down to what I'm feeling, it's a slightly cleaner cut. Slightly. Just barely. In fact, I would label it as trivial. If you're going to use this like extensively, the Ultimate Alpha Beast is going to be the easier one to maintain over time simply because it's not two different edges. This is a Tanto. You have to sharpen each individual edge. Some people don't care. Some people care absolutely, right? And also, there'll be a difference in terms of the material. This one is D2 and this one is LMAX. Now, that's going to be a decision-making factor for a lot of people. Some people don't care. And I'm kind of in the don't care at this geometry territory. Yes, if I'm paying a lot of money, I want, the most premium blade steel. But also the part of me that knows that at this geometry, the different blade steels are hardly going to make a difference at all because everything is so wildly inconvenient with these knives, right? But if it comes down to the material and you really want to feel like you're for a number of reasons, right? This is LMAX. The edge is technically going to last a little bit longer. It might be slightly harder to sharpen. I don't know the exact HRC range on this D2. It wouldn't surprise me if they hit it to the industry standard ho-hum 59 to 61. D2 shines brighter, a little higher. LMAX, however, 59 to 61 is okay, right? I think a lot of people lean into this, like, anything below 60 bad, anything above 60 good, and it's definitely not how that works. It depends on the steel. LMAX has a pretty wide range as far as where it's optimized, but you do get more edge retention out of pushing it higher, just like D2. It's just that 59 D2 is blah, and 59 LMAX is okay. It's just they're different compositions. I think that LMAX should be 60 to 62. That would make me feel good. And then D2 at least 60 to 62. I think D2 really, really becomes spectacular, 61, 63. But anyways, I don't know what this is. I know that the Miguron Omega is hardened between 59 and 61, which is fine. And it is also definitely a more premium steel. This is a powder steel made by Bowler, and it is absolutely considered a super steel, while the D2 is, to my knowledge, an ingot steel and is just D2. It's fine. It's a good steel, but wow, we typically don't see this steel on a knife that's this expensive, but this knife is expensive for an entirely different reason than, when we talk about typical knives. As far as like which knife looks cooler, that's just preference, right? One of them is just straighter design. One of them is a lot more angular. They are both undeniably like extremely aggressive and masculine knives. Comfort and let's say cool factor, because comfort's one thing, but most people aren't buying a knife like this for comfort. So let's talk about which one feels more, you know. Both of them are equally comfortable, if that's the right word. It's more like there's nothing that I'm like, well, that's sharp. Like they both fit in my hand and I'm like, yeah, I feel like I've got a good grip on it, right? You're holding a big chunk of an object and your brain is kind of dedicated to how wild that is, right? It's such a ridiculously thick object compared to a typical pocket knife. It's hard to get your brain to focus on how comfortable it is. Over time, using this to like process some material for a long period of time, your hand's going to fatigue. It's a big object, right? And you're pushing a heavy object that does not have proper geometry for really cutting anything. So yeah, your hand's going to fatigue either way. If I was going to give one of these an award for like how, you know, how chest beating caveman I feel, right? They're both great. They both give me that I am powerful kind of, you know, cringy, you know, feeling. It's the whole reason that any of us buy this stuff, right? But I gotta say, probably the Ultimate Alpha Beast because it's so big. It's not like this. It's heavy, but it's big and crazy, but it's also heavier, which is just adding to the insanity of this thing. This is that. For most people, this would be the biggest, heaviest knife that they've ever handled by a landslide. But because I have both of them here, yeah, I'd give it to this guy, right? So it might be slightly less convenient, less natural to, you know, manipulate, and it might cut ever so slightly better, right? But I didn't set that up correctly. Pros and cons, right? This guy is definitely the pocket bruiser, right? But it does give you that feeling, like it. Let's talk about some other things that set these two apart that could cause you to choose one over the other. This actually has a locking pin. Why does that matter? Well, if you were really going to push these things to the limit, let's be honest, a cold steel triad lock is still definitely superior to this. I'm still going to have some goober down in the comments who watched for like 30 seconds and he's like, I'll stick to my cold steel triad lock. Thanks. Yeah. I think everybody knows that the cold steel triad lock is still going to be stronger. People aren't buying these things because they assume that they're stronger than the cold steel triad lock or other similar locking systems. They don't really care about that. They're buying this because it's cartoonishly thick and that's what they like about it. So thank you for your input. I promise you that guy's down there. I promise you. Or somebody similar. But if you are going to push this thing to the limits, adding in the second stop, which, by the way, to my knowledge, it doesn't matter which hole. This came with one pin. A lot of people said, oh, one hole's for the closed position to lock it in the closed position, and one hole is for the open position. Nope, both holes work for both positions. I just realized what I was saying as it came out of my mouth. Oh boy, inescapable. So yeah, you can lock it out in the open position here. And you can also, like, there's threads. The threads work either way. There's a hole in the blade either way. Both of them stop. It does not take over for the frame lock entirely, right? So if I move the frame lock, it's moving. Why? Because it's now freed up to do that because the frame lock was still pressed against it. So there is still, you know, force going into the lock on this thing. If you were to like bash this, let's say you're like, oh, baton mode engage, and you start bashing on this with a log trying to baton with it. It might hold up for a little bit. I don't know how long it'll hold up realistically. I mean, I broke a frame lock from Max Ace doing that. Now, that cut was at a 90-degree angle on the relief cut, and this has a curved cut, so it should hold up a little better. But you are still definitely impacting the lock face, right? And every time you impact, you send energy from here through the blade into the lock face, you're causing unnecessary wear. So don't look at this and expect it to be apocalypse ready. This simply makes it slightly better than a standard frame lock, and it ensures that while you are using this knife, perhaps during a cutting task where there's a lot more of this and getting the blade stuck and having to pull it back out, this ensures that there's no way for the lock bar to slip over and have the thing close on your hand because there's pressure on the stop pin, the additional stop pin. I think that's more so what we should expect of this. But that does make this, in my opinion, at least the safer knife under extreme use. Both of them have a pretty heavy lock bar tension. Let me see here. So yeah, so this has the extra stop pin, but it has lighter lock bar tension. This does not have the extra pin, but it's got really heavy lock bar tension. I'd say this is about 20% heavier lock bar tension. And the ultimate outcome of that is that this guy, it's pretty good detent though. Ultimate Alpha Beast, slightly heavier detent. That lock bar tension is assisting with that. But yeah, I think this one would be the safe, like if you were really going to go out and do that, right? Which was, there's like 7 people considering that here. However, with the Ultimate Alpha Beast, you have more options. With this guy, you have the option of the plain blade, or you have the option of the satin finished DLC, which is going to look a lot like my satin finished DLC Excalibur. In fact, Miguron's satin DLC, do I have, actually, maybe I have an example right here. Yeah. Okay, so here is a Miguron, like this is another overbuilt Miguron knife called the Geddon that's in a satin DLC. So this is what it would look like. It would look exactly like this, right? That's $10 more. This guy, the Ultimate Alpha Beast, comes in 3 configurations. You're looking at the second of the 3, at least how they listed on the website, which, by the way, these are both listed down in the description. This is the stone-washed blade and the stone-washed frame. You also have the option of the blasted blade and the blasted frame. If you're going to do this, be careful, because this is the one that's going to corrode the fastest. D2 is not quite stainless. It's only 12% chromium. So it'll do okay, but my D2 prototype actually did end up with a little bit of corrosion right there. So, and then you also, this is a big decision maker for a lot of people because this is really impressive. The third option is a near mirror true DLC. Now, some people are like, I don't care about that. I don't want a shiny blade. But this is something that you cannot get with the Miguron, at least not yet. This is the one, they sent me 3, and I'm going to give these 2 away. But this is the one I'm keeping because this is just amazing, right? It is way more expensive than this one, right? And that's really what it's going to come down to for a lot of people. Before I start talking about price, like if it comes down to it, both of these are awesome. And admittedly, just like I said in the review of the Omega, the head of the company asked me, like, what should we call this? And I said, well, the other one's called the Alpha Beast. Why don't you call this one the Omega, right? Since we're playing with the, they meant alpha in terms of like, alpha, I am, supreme ruler of whatever domain, right? The alpha. Not necessarily just the first letter in the Greek alphabet. And I said, okay, well, you can play with that. Call this one the Omega, right? Arguably, depending on your perspective, the Omega is more of the, that's the end, like that's the superior letter because it's the end, right? So, yeah, just they named it that way in terms of friendly competition, but it was meant to compete with the original Alpha Beast, right? So looking at these two, like the crazy, I think the craziest version of each one is the DLC coded one. Like if I, could have gotten the DLC coded one of this one, I would have. I'm going to keep both of these because they're awesome and I'm not unhappy with this. But I think the DLC coded Ultimate Alpha Beast is definitely the coolest looking of any configuration between the two. It just is. That's just my opinion, right? But that's not always what it's going to come down to. It's really going to come down to price tag. And by the way, they don't make left-handed versions of either of these. It's just right-handed. Both pocket clips, both of these knives carry like bricks, exactly like bricks. Both of them are incredibly inconvenient. And it's, like I said, it's very hard to focus on literally anything else while you're carrying either of these knives. It's just more so with the Ultimate Alpha Beast. This one's also slightly harder to get into your pocket because the clip is shorter and stiffer. And the texturing on the Ultimate Alpha Beast, no, it's actually about the same. Right. This one has a longer and slightly, more pliable, I guess. It's more friendly pocket clip. Is it pliant? Pliable? I don't know. That cricket's still in here. I tried. I went out in the garage, couldn't find him. I have no idea. I just have to wait until he dies. I don't think crickets live very long, do they? Hopefully not. I hate these. I hate this season. Anyways, in and out of the pocket's a little easier with this guy, and it's lighter. This guy's a little harder, and it's a little heavier, right? Both of them have completely completely solid lockup, no blade play up, down, left, or right. They are absolutely solid. And both of them, on all three examples that I got of the Ultimate Alpha Beast, both of them appear to be essentially, this one may be slightly off because I play with it so much. I probably need to tighten it down a little more. The other two that don't get flipped nearly as often, you can see perfectly centered there. And this one also, yeah, maybe, is it my eyes? I can't tell. This, yeah, it's centered, right? Okay. And then this guy, which admittedly has not been flipped nearly as much as this one. This guy's also perfectly centered. Let's just, I'll go ahead and see if I can give that just a tiny little crank and bring that blade back to center. I'm going to guess probably, but it's, you know, it's worth checking on and just like making sure. A little bit of a crank. Did it pull it back? I think it did. Yeah, I think we did pull that one back to center. So it's just from me flipping it. So this can be locked. I mean, we can add Loctite to it if we want to and get that absolutely perfect. But anyways, let's talk about like both, like as far as manufacturing quality goes, they're like, it's the same between the two, right? One more thing before we talk about price. You cannot touch the blade on this one because it has a full backspacer. You can touch the blade on this one because the backspacer doesn't close it off. They definitely should have added that, right? Absolutely. Which one of these knives is the better value for all of you who are about to make an inevitable, irresponsible purchase? Because that's ultimately what this comes down to. If you're still watching this video, you are about to make an irresponsible purchase. You're about to buy an object that is about as far from the original idea of a pocket knife as ever was, right? This is something that you're buying to put a smile on your face, right? Well, this guy, the base price of the Omega is coming in at a whopping $425 for the standard version, and I think $430, might be $429 for the standard version, $439 for the DLC version. And that's LMAX and titanium, 425 thousandths of LMAX and 250 thousandths of titanium. Or you can buy the Ultimate Alpha Beast in D2, 450 thousandths of D2 and 235 thousandths of titanium, but bigger overall, for 499 euros for the standard versions. That's for the blasted and stonewash versions, or 599 euros for the semi-mirror or near mirror DLC. How does that translate to the, as of the time of this video, I think the conversion was 1.17 euros, 1.17 American dollars. So 500 euros would come out to $580 for the standard version, for the standard versions of these knives like this, and $700 for the mirror polished or near mirror DLC. So we're looking at either 580 or 700 versus 430 or 440. The Omega is the clear better value. I mean, by so much. The closest comparison is $440 to $580. That's before we calculate any other fees or any, I don't even know. Ordering from Tools for Gents, right? I have no idea. You know, maybe they have maybe they got a warehouse in the USA where we don't have to worry about, you know, costs associated with shipping across the ocean or whatever. But you're looking at a bare minimum, if my math is right, 440 to 580, it's $140 difference. Up to $240 difference. The Omega is a way better value. But you might not want a Tanto. You might not like the way that it looks, and you might really want that mirror DLC. Either way, you will be paying a lot of money for an object that will not bring you hardly anything in the way of utility. But if you are a gigantic fan of massively overbuilt knives, both of these knives will bring you happiness. One is just you're going to pay a lot more for that happiness, but it might be exactly what you want. My opinion is to buy the one that you like the look of more, right? And make sure that you can budget for it. Because if you don't buy the one that is your true favorite, then you'll end up just buying both, which is even less responsible. That's what'll happen though. If you're like, oh, that one's so much more, I'll just buy this one, it'll be fine. Then you won't be able to stop thinking about this one. Then if it goes out of stock, then you go to the secondary market. And then you got to overpay for it, maybe, if it ends up being worth more, right? Save up and buy the one that you like the most. But this, I wanted to compare these two because currently they are the absolute top of the Overbuilt knife world, right? So they're both awesome. You'll be happy with either. They're both just insane, right? I just wanted to, being somebody who has both and I didn't have to pay for either of them, I just felt like I might be able to give a very clear insight into these two. It's not overly biased towards one or the other. Because the truth is I make, like, if you buy this from my link or you buy this from my link, I'm going to get commissions either way. Right? If you're looking for a practical pocket knife, I wouldn't recommend either of these. I would recommend you go to my Cheap Knives I Like playlist and find something under $75 that's a lot easier to carry. But if you're hell-bent on one of these big boys, well, hopefully I've given you enough information to make an informed, rational decision, as much of a rational decision as you can. Thank you so much to both PMP and Miguron for building knives in this category, because without people like them, the knife world would be substantially more boring. It would just be full of buck 110s and Opinels, and my God, what a hellish nightmare that would be. Even if you don't like this stuff, it's nice that we have this type of diversity out there. And thank you so much to Tools for Gents for loaning or actually giving me these so that I could show, and also to Miguron for giving me this. So anyways, let me know what your favorite is, even if you don't plan on picking one up. I'd still like to know. Make sure your notifications for my channel are turned on. Links in the description for both of these guys. That's going to be it today. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.